you don't know what you're doing, if you're starting a business in a new industry, not only might you not know how to create systems, but you might need to build those systems that will adjust over time. Your systems in month one might not be the same as in year two. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And I always wish back in the day that I had someone that said, hey, this is how you hire A players. This is how you create SOP. This is how you prevent issues, prevent turnover. And that's why we created Outsource School. But let me kind of give you a fundamental of an SOP, because I think this will help a lot of people. An SOP is a standard operating procedure, and you want as many of these in your business as possible. You want to own the systems of your business, because if everything that you get done in your business, you're hiring an agency, hiring a consultant for, and you don't own any of the systems, you will lose all the leverage in your business. You're probably not going to be able to scale very far. And in addition, no one's going to want to buy your business if you don't actually own the systems and know what's going on in your business.
For me, this is a special episode of Business Growth because I get to talk with Nathan Hirsch. See, I've had Nathan on the podcast before, and I've had his business partner, Connor Gillivan, on the podcast. There are few people in this world that I really, really admire, and just about anything that they say, I'm totally impressed. Nate is one of those people. See, Nate's found his sweet spot, what he's really good at, and he is Mr. Systems and Mr. Processes. I mean, he is the SOP king. So what you're going to learn from this episode is how to hire great people, the processes for doing it, the thinking for doing it, and really the way that he is going about and making this revolutionary for you as a business owner. He's going to talk about Outsource School, which is his latest company, which I'm also a member of. I think I was one of the very first few members of. I pay for it myself, no special freebies or anything like that. That's how much I believe in Outsource School. You're going to glean a ton of valuable information from this episode. So dive in, enjoy, take a look at Outsource School. If you're looking to hire people, if you're looking to grow your business, get the SOPs that will really help you take your business to the next level, this is the episode for you. And Nate Hirsch is the guy to share that message. Let's jump right in. Nate, welcome to the podcast. I am thrilled to have you here with me today.
Spencer, it's great to be here. I feel like you're one of the first people that joined Outsource School, so it's my pleasure to be on the podcast.
Yeah, I think about this. You mentioned that, and all of a sudden, the Oregon Trail wagon party is going across, and I feel like I passed the test. I didn't get dysentery, and now I can share my story with others. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
For our listeners, to give you a little bit more context, there are a lot of people that will take your attention and tools that will take your attention in business. And there's a lot of things that are really good. There are a few things that are great. So to give you some background, listeners, what Nate and Connor have done over at Outsource School is a step above great. The ability that they have to think through processes and hire VAs and take the stress and time off of your plate is invaluable. So in the podcast today, we're going to talk about and actually give you steps, insights on how you can get virtual assistants to help you in your business. You're not doing business for the sake of money. If that's the case, I'm sorry. You should be doing business for something much larger than that. And the time that you have is the most precious commodity. So hopefully the investment of time that you take with us, you're going to get much of a greater reward. Is that something we can both live on today? Does that work for you?
I'm all about time. I mean, like you said, it's the only thing you can't buy more of, you can't get more of. And the entrepreneurs that have the most success value their time and their focus at the highest possible level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We do. Okay. So here's how it goes. This podcast, depending on where you are as a business owner, if you're just starting out and validating the idea, we will give you examples, some resources on how you could use outsourced help with that. If you already have traction, you've validated the idea, you've got revenue coming in, we'll give you examples with that. And then if you have a business that's thriving and maybe you're looking to exit or seriously grow, we'll give you examples there. So let's go to the very beginning, the first piece, the validation. You've started several businesses. You work with a lot of different business owners. Let's bring in the context of where outsourcing can help speed up the actual MVP phase of it and the validation phase. And so walk us through some of those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the biggest example of that. I mean, I've started 3 businesses now with less than $5,000, and I didn't take a course that said, "Hey, this is how you start this business and follow the blueprint." I took a minimum viable product to market with FreeUp. I created a really crummy software to record freelancers and virtual assistants hours and took it to market with Outsource School. We started with one system, cracking the VA code, and took it to market. And even before we had any revenue there, when we were still in that trial and error stage, we hired some part time virtual assistants. We didn't hire 4 people at 40 hours a week, but we hired a few different VAs, 5 hours a week, to help us do the trial and error. And that was to help us reach out to influencers, do lead generation, potential clients, because I found that talking to your ideal client is the best way to find out if your idea is great or stupid or somewhere in between that just needs some tweaks. Talking with influencers is a great way to speed that up, where if some influencer gives you that break where they think that what you're building is going to be valuable to their community, they'll promote you. And talk about skipping the whole testing Facebook ads phase. That's a great way to just get in front of lots of communities. Very similar to podcasts and getting on YouTube influencers, videos, stuff like that. So I use virtual assistants in the trial and error phase. And the other thing to keep in mind is sometimes when you start a new business, you switch industries. I mean, I went from baby products on Amazon, which I got good at Amazon. I knew Amazon's algorithm, but that didn't really teach me anything about marketing. So when I got to FreeUp, I had to learn marketing from the ground up, SEO, podcasts, Facebook ads, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know what would work, what wouldn't work. So I used virtual assistants to try lots of different things. Things that worked, I doubled down on. Things that didn't work, I pulled back and tried again later with a different approach. And that really helped me accelerate my business. If I had waited until I could afford a US employee for 40 hours a week, I would have had to wait a year before getting any help. So it really did accelerate that process.
Okay, so you mentioned something that was pretty key. Maybe some of our listeners will pick up on this. They did, maybe if they didn't. As you were testing and validating the idea, you hired several virtual assistants for about 5 hours each. And I think there's a misconception that when you hire a virtual assistant, you got to go all in and it's got to be one person. So break down why you went for multiple and for the shorter hours.
Yeah. So keep in mind, you hire a virtual assistant for 5 hours a week. It comes out to, for $5 an hour, 5 hours a week, that comes out to about $1,300 a year. So $1,300 a year to save about 260 hours a year. That's 6.5 weeks you get back just by hiring a virtual assistant for 5 hours a week. Now, what I like to do is, first of all, get my focus on the right thing. So I'll hire a virtual assistant 5 hours a week or less just to do my bookkeeping up front, just so I don't have to touch it. I don't have to look at it. I'm getting reports so I can actually make intelligent decisions based on the numbers coming in. And any time that I spend doing bookkeeping, not only does it probably have to get redone anyway, but it's time that I'm not growing my business. The second thing to keep my focus is someone to just run my inbox. And at the beginning of a business, you're not getting hundreds of emails or thousands of emails like I was in year 4 of FreeUp, but you are getting emails from different partners, potential clients, customers. So I had a VA that would just clear my inbox out every single morning so that I could wake up, not spend the first hour or two of my day clearing my inbox, respond to that important email or two that they left for me, and then get a head start on my day. And then I would use the other part-time VAs to do kind of what I mentioned before, do some lead generation, find me popular Facebook groups, podcasts, stuff like that, so that I'm not spending all day doing research. I'm spending more time on the actual outreach, because at the beginning of your business, you focus on sales. Not only does sales cure everything, but if you don't focus on sales early on, you get into that habit where you're just constantly working on your product, but you don't really know what the customer wants, and you're not actually growing a business if no money's coming in. So I like to get my focus back and then use virtual assistants for that trial and error. And I keep in mind that you're either going to hire too early or too late, right? And if you hire too late, there's an opportunity cost that you're never going to get back. You're going to be way behind in your business. And worst case scenario, if I hire too early, I haven't proven my business model enough, it was a bad business idea, whatever it is, I'm out hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars. But we're not talking lots of money in the grand scheme of things. And usually I start a business with $5,000. I don't know why that's my number, but you have that money up front that you're going to spend. You might as well put that towards some part-time people to help you accelerate it faster.
Do you find that most entrepreneurs, business owners, have adequate systems, processes, and thinking in place in order for them to be able to hire those three people? I find that most don't. That's why I want to get your insight. And then if you feel the same or different, then I want to figure out how we can paint the path to solving that problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's really why I created Outsource School, because I know a lot of people hear, hey, you have to hire virtual assistants, you need systems, you need processes. Oh, go hire a bookkeeper. It's that simple. But we all know that it's not. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're starting a business in a new industry, not only might you not know how to create systems, but you might need to build those systems that will adjust over time. Your systems in month one might not be the same as in year two. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And I always wished back in the day that I had someone that said, hey, this is how you hire A players. This is how you create SOP. This is how you prevent issues, prevent turnover. And that's why we created Outsource School. But let me kind of give you a fundamental of an SOP, because I think this will help a lot of people. An SOP is a standard operating procedure, and you want as many of these in your business as possible. You want to own the systems of your business, because if everything that you gets done in your business, you're hiring an agency, hiring a consultant for, and you don't own any of the systems, you lose all the leverage in your business. You're probably not going to be able to scale very far. And in addition, no one's going to want to buy your business if you don't actually own the systems and know what's going on in your business. So I like to break SOPs down into three parts. You've got the why, you've got the steps, and you've got the important reminders. So for the why, you want to tell whoever you hire why they're doing this task, what the goal is, how it impacts the big picture of your business, and what success and failure looks like. I'll even put down, hey, my last hire didn't work out for XYZ reason. This is really what we're looking for. So before they even get started on the first thing to do in the task, they understand the big picture, the why, what success looks like. Then you go through the steps, and you don't need to get it 100% on day one. I like to do a little brain dump, but for a few different days just to get it out on paper. We have a tool called Simply SOP that we now use because video is better than text. But you want to get these steps down, and your goal is really to get it like 70 to 80% of the way there. Because what I want to do is eventually hire a virtual assistant to own that process, iron out the kinks, and make that process better over time. It doesn't have to happen right away, but get as much of the system down as you possibly can. And then the last thing is the important reminders. Don't take all the important stuff and hide it in step 10, part C. Take all the important stuff and put it as an important reminder at the bottom. For example, I have a VA that handles my inbox, and my important reminder is, hey, if my accountant emails me, if my lawyer emails me, don't respond to those emails. Leave those for me. Let me know about that. So whatever mess up would be detrimental to your business, would freak you out, would make you not want to trust virtual assistants anymore, put all those important reminders at the bottom. And if you start breaking down your business into the why, the steps, and the important reminders for customer service, for bookkeeping, for lead generation, that's how you start to build systems in your business.
So when you're first starting out, and if you're, I just want to get into the head of these entrepreneurs that are just starting out, and obviously for you listeners, most of you are going to be somewhat tech knowledgeable, and because you're listening to a podcast, we've had interviews here on this podcast, so you're probably not in an industry that is tech averse, so that's good, but not everyone thinks in the way that you just explained. And so they're going to have to start with one process, one system. You mentioned bookkeeping. You mentioned going out and someone controlling the inbox, or maybe it could be someone that's, getting someone booked on podcasts or whatever that may be. Is there one? I want to help create a solution here. Is there one of those that you'd say, hey, listener, hit pause. This is the first one that you would start on?
Yeah, it's tough because every business is a little different. My personal preference is to do bookkeeping and inbox first. Now, would someone listening, would I say, hey, hire a bookkeeper as your first VA hire? Probably not. That probably comes down the line. I would start with something that's low risk. If someone does lead generation, and lead generation could mean lots of different things depending on what you're trying to do. It could be trying to find Facebook groups or podcasts or partners or potential clients. That's very low risk. Like, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to send you over a list of leads that aren't very good, and you're going to have to give feedback and adjust your SOP and your process. So if you want to talk low risk entry point, that's what I would do, because the upside's fantastic. If you get a virtual assistant who's great at finding you leads, that's going to help accelerate your business and save you time. And worst case scenario, it gives you feedback to improve and update your process.
I love that. That is, I've asked a lot of people, and they've never been able to say it that way. So that's perfect. I agree with you. Okay, so low risk. Now, once a business has traction, we're in a totally different scenario. You've got money. You can be hiring people. And again, for you listeners, just because it's outsource school does not mean that you have to outsource it to the Philippines. It just means that if you have employees locally, or someone, you're going to get interns or whatever this, you can use these same methodologies. So I want to iterate that to everyone. So once you have traction, you're moving ahead, money's in the bank. How are you looking at it? Your time is your most precious commodity. You got to free that up. What are you doing?
So this is something that I wish I had learned earlier. I started doing this a few years ago. Is I figured out what my ideal day looks like. And we actually have a calendar management playbook for this. But I want to know, hey, for me personally, my most productive time is from 7 to 9 a.m. Whatever the most important project of the day is. Today I was working on a masterclass. Like, I'm doing that right when I wake up. Then I like to take a break. My brain's exhausted. I work out for an hour. I do one podcast every single day. You're my podcast today. I like to do it in the mid afternoon. I learned that I don't like doing it right when I wake up. I don't like doing it later on in the day when I'm tired. And then my phone calls, I learned that, hey, I get to be out of my office. I can walk the dogs, be on the phone, whatever it is. So my ideal day is that last noon to 3 o'clock when my work day ends. I do phone calls then. So what I want to do is figure that out, and it's going to be different for everyone. And you want to get a virtual assistant to help keep you accountable and help you keep that ideal day. And the way you do that is you have a virtual assistant handle your schedule. So I have a VA that for this podcast, they booked it. For if someone reaches out to schedule a call with me, they book it, and they make sure that, and we have rules, and they make sure that they follow the rules. So I only do one podcast a day. So if someone says, hey, can Nate do this podcast today? Sorry, Nate's already scheduled with Spencer. Let's look at the next open day. Same thing with phone calls. I'll tell them, hey, I only want a maximum of 3 client phone calls a day. Whatever it is, you can make it customized to what you want and have a virtual assistant help you do that. And that goes perfectly with the virtual assistant in your inbox. I mentioned that once you get to the point where you're profitable and you're making money, if you as a CEO, you're spending 2 hours a day in your inbox, that's not a good use of your time. So having one virtual assistant that you train to manage your schedule and your inbox and set your focus on the most important things, doing your ideal day every single day, that's the first thing you have to get set up, and everything else can build up of that.
As far as the virtual assistant that you're bringing in, we're going to touch on several points you made. Are you at that point getting someone to help take care of sales, customer support, content production? Like, what does that look like as well, as far as staff?
Definitely. And the reason that I mentioned that the calendar thing first is because I feel like a lot of CEOs get to that point where, okay, at 5 figures or 6 figures, they were maybe handling it okay, but then they get to multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, and then they're just working 60, 70 hours a week. So to start off, you need to get control of your schedule, and then that's going to allow you time to look more at the big picture, look more at the strategy, and say, hey, I need to outsource customer service. I need to outsource sales. Now, customer service is one of the top of the list for the things that you need to outsource first. If you're a multiple 6-figure CEO and you're responding to all your customer service emails, that's obviously a problem. So hiring customer service is up there. I don't think it should be your first hire because it is one of the most time intensive things to hire someone for. So if you have experience hiring virtual assistants for other roles, even your inbox, which is a great predecessor to customer service, you're going to get more experience. You're going to become better at it. And Outsource School can help you with that as well. And then sales to me is one of the last things you outsource. And the reason for that is because most people haven't really figured out their sales process. Even when they get a little bit bigger, it's developing. So until you get to the point where you know your pitch, you know the clarity, you know your customer avatar, you know the answer to all the common questions that someone might ask, that's when you start outsourcing sales. And even then, you want to look at sales as 100%. And you want to start off, how do I get a virtual assistant doing that first 10%? Maybe that first 10% is lead generation or appointment booking. Then you get a virtual assistant that can just answer the most common questions. Then eventually, and I did this at Free Up, we're building it up in Outsource School, then you can have a virtual assistant even take phone calls and close sales calls and stuff like that. But when you tell people, hey, you can outsource sales, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that just hate doing sales. So in their mind, they're like, oh, that's easy. My first VA hire, I'm just going to outsource my sales team. But they haven't really developed their sales process. And you need to spend time actually figuring that out before you start to outsource it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've designed your schedule, your life, you've thought it through. Here's a very direct question. Are you working 60, 80, 100 hours a week right now?
Me personally, no. My lifestyle has drastically changed since I sold Free Up. So I probably work 40, 45, and it depends. But my ideal day, like I said, I start my day at 7, most productive thing for 2 hours, work out, do my own podcast, take some calls in the afternoon and some meetings, and I'm done by 2:30, 3 o'clock, depending on the day. There's always exceptions to certain rules. Like if I get invited on a big podcast, I'm not going to tell like Roland Frazier, sorry, I only do one podcast a day. Talk to you in October. Like there's certain exceptions that you have to make. But for the most part, that's true.
So here's another question. You sold Free Up. It was a pretty good success. Why not just become an angel investor and start your own rolling fund, the Outsource rolling fund or whatever, and go and do your own thing? Versus jumping back into doing this?
Yeah, everything's kind of still on the table too. I think once we sold Free Up, the conversation between Connor and I was, all right, do we like working together? Are we sick of each other? And luckily he wasn't sick of me. And then it became, what do we do? And we had real estate projects we almost invested in. We were talking about doing angel investing. People started reaching out and asking us if we could teach them our system and our process. And we spent 30 days cracking the VA code, which was our signature system. And we got it out there, and we also launched the first week of COVID, and we didn't know if people would like it or hate it. And if people hated it, we were just going to scrap it, refund everyone, and go back to the drawing board. And if people liked it, we enjoy startups. We enjoy building communities, and we're going to focus on building it up. So everything's still on the table. Stuff will change, but we're really enjoying Outsource School. We love interacting with other entrepreneurs, and we want to see if we can build it up. And honestly, we haven't accomplished anything yet. There's still a lot of work to do. But we enjoy the business model where it's very flexible. It's remote. We can be anywhere at any given time. We can impact people. We donate 3% of all sales to Teach for the Philippines, which is our favorite charity. So we get to impact other people while still living the lifestyle we want. And creating a very lean business that's easy to run efficiently. So we're still in that, let's see how far we can push this thing mode. And I'm sure other opportunities will open up as well.
Yeah, they always do. You and I, and for listeners, you've probably already listened to an interview on the podcast with Nate that I've had before. I interviewed Connor several years ago, I believe it was. And so we have some context here. Let all of you kind of get a peek behind the scenes. So after the last interview I did with Nate, one of your assistants reached out to me. I can't remember who it was. I apologize. They're an important person, but I just can't remember the name. And she reached out and we started chatting. And this is how the sales process went for me coming into Outsource School. And I just want you listeners to understand, this podcast here is not a paid promotion. And Nate didn't go out and he wasn't like, oh, hey, here, I'm going to give you this so that you come in. No, I actually turned over my credit card and paid for it because I saw the value in it. And I think for listeners here on this podcast, I want you to understand that, like, sometimes when you're hustling and when you're in a brand new thing, you might try and trade or you might do that. But the problem is you may be trading away your real opportunity and your real commitment to things. So I applaud you. The things that you are talking about are legit. I've been in the business world for a while. I've done some investing, we've thought on that same stage of being an angel and just, getting out of this world. But you made a comment, I think it was last week in our group, that you wanted to be actually working with businesses in the B2C space. You didn't want to be in B2B. You wanted to actually be making an impact.
Opposite. I wanted to be B2B.
Sorry, there you go. I mixed it up in my head. You wanted to be B2B. You didn't want to be in the Amazon space of just working with a factory and spitting it out there.
Yeah.
So that's what I really admire, because this is someone that has the time and the ability to do that. And so, listeners, it's like ever so more important to listen to this type of conversation.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I did the Amazon thing for 7 years. Like I made money. It was a fun experience. It was my first baby, my first business. But by year 7, I felt like I wasn't really. There's no why. It was just how do we push more products on Amazon? And with Free Up, there was a much bigger why, helping business owners, helping freelancers, virtual assistants, and with Outsource School, a very similar why.
In our conversations so far, we've talked about the business owners that are brand new with an idea, and that can be the very first venture they've done, or it can just be a side project. Then we've talked about what happens once you get some traction, and that number can be variable. I mean, to some people, traction could mean that you've got $50,000 of transactions you've done. Some it could mean 100,000. Some it means like, hey, I just barely cracked 1 million, and I think I may have something. Depends on the business that you're in. So let's take it up to the next level. Someone that more than likely, at a substantial amount, you probably have team members, you have people that you're working with. But what you need to be doing, and this is me projecting, so correct me if I'm wrong, and this is the way I work. I look at all of my team members that are here locally in the States, and I'm looking for ways how I can graduate them, how I can move them up, and then find outsource support that can fill in those, and it's always continuing to grow. Do you do the same thing? And if so, help us understand the methodology and thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you need team leaders, right? You can't just have 25 people all reporting to Nathan. That gets crazy. And I mean, I actually just finished a team leader playbook that I'm excited to present to the Outsource School community in the next week, because it's so important. I mean, it was a key to growing Free Up. At the end of Free Up, we had 35 virtual assistants, but we had 4 team leaders and we had multiple assistant team leaders. So we would meet with the team leaders every week, and they would go out and manage their team and run team meetings. And you can get there a few different ways. My preferred way to get there is not hiring externally, because to me, that's incredibly risky. You're hiring someone that doesn't know your business. You're not going to know whether they're a good leader until you actually train them on your business. And then even after that, you have to go to all the people that have been there longer and said, by the way, this new guy, he's in charge of you. Can be done. It's not my preference, and it's usually more expensive and more risky. My personal preference is to find virtual assistants, and this applies to anyone. You can do this with your US employees too. Give them ownership of your task, of your SOP. This SOP is yours. I want you to make it better. I want you to figure out how we can make this more efficient, how we can make it cost less, how we can automate it more. And the people that take better ownership of the SOPs, then you go to them and you see if they're even interested in the leadership role. It's one thing that we learned is you never want to force anyone into that role. They have to actually want it. They want to actually be able to lead people. They want to actually self-grow, self-improve, stuff like that. So then you kind of have that conversation and you make sure they're the right fit. And then it's a little bit of a trial and error to make sure they can actually handle it, make sure the team accepts them as a team leader, and people have training to go. And sometimes you get really lucky where someone might have been in a leadership role in another company and they came over to you and you can promote them. So my preference is always to promote from within, but I want every team to have at least one team leader. Like my billing team will have a team leader. My customer service team will have a team leader. My marketing team will have a team leader. And then you have certain teams that run 24/7, like customer service, where it actually makes sense to have multiple team leaders and assistant team leaders. So we had a team leader for the morning, a team leader for the afternoon, a team leader for weekends, and assistant team leaders that could fill in if a team leader was out, because you want someone with experience there if a customer is getting escalated or something like that, or else as a CEO, you just keep getting pulled back into customer service, which is not what you want. So at that point, it all becomes creating that organization chart in your business, creating structure, team leaders, assistant team leaders, and teaching them to run their own meetings so that you can have KPIs for each team. You can meet with the team leaders and they go out and run their team.
How much of the thinking and methodology and the stuff you're talking about is you, and how much of it is Connor of creating those pieces that you're talking about?
We both do it. So the way that we do it, we divide and conquer. So Connor handles the dev side, the marketing side, the website side. I handle the customer service, the fulfillment side, and the sales side. So we'll cross meetings. We know what's going on in the other teams, but like if I catch a dev issue, I'm not running to the developers. I'm sending it over to Connor, and he's handling it with the team leaders and the team over there, and vice versa, sales and customer service. And if I take a week off, he might handle some sales calls and all that. But for the most part, we divide and conquer.
And is that due to the way that, the different ways that you guys think, or is that just what worked in Free Up and that's what you continue to do here?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Connor and I, we're actually very different people. And we have the same values, the same beliefs. We care about treating people well, and we have the same business philosophies and long-term goals. But we just have very different skill sets. Like, he's much more calm, cool, collective behind the scenes. I'm a little bit more like rah rah, high energy, moving quickly at all times. And I'm much better, just from my experience in the customer service sales, being the face of the company side. He's much more better on the technical side, working with developers, which is not easy to do, by the way. And I personally don't like doing it. So we've kind of learned over the years, like, who's better for what thing.
And I'm asking this because for all of our listeners, if you have a partner or if you have a team lead that's already working with you, you have to play into their strengths. Now, you've mentioned this about Connor. I would imagine that you both have developed the thinking methodology for creating amazing SOPs. I've seen some you've created. Connor's obviously created a bunch. How did you learn those? Was that something natural to you, or did you have to actually sharpen the sword and get good at that?
The same way I learned how to hire virtual assistants, years of trial and error and wasted time and wasted money and bad hires and turnover and poor communication. I mean, that's really like why we created Outsource School, because listen, like, hiring isn't rocket science, right? Like, I don't have an MBA. Like, there's plenty of people out there that learn how to hire. Like, you can do it eventually. If you do it enough, you figure it out. But I always wish that there was a shortcut. There was a faster way to do it. And once we learned how to do it and mastered it to the point where, hey, the same 4 people we hired in the first week of Free Up are with us in year 4 of Free Up when we sold Free Up, and they're still with us now using very similar SOPs that have just been made better over time, then we felt like we were comfortable to actually teach our processes to other people. So yeah, it definitely didn't come natural. I mean, I think part of it, not having a real job after college, probably hurt us in some level, because I was basing all my leadership, all my management, all my systems on the few internships where I didn't even have the best managers. So I think it was a ton of trial and error, and we really want to provide people a shortcut to not do what we did.
Yeah, totally the honest answer. I've been there as well. We've covered, briefly on the, what happens when you have a lot of traction, who you're hiring. But the downside of this, if you're getting them on tasks, projects that aren't going to be client facing, or something that's not actually going to ruin your brand, there's not a lot to lose. One thing that I learned, I had to go through many years ago, which is understanding what are the emergencies in any business. And I think a lot of people don't actually take the time to think through what are the emergencies. There's not that many. What else should we cover and talk about? This is your world of outsourcing. Yes, I've outsourced for well over a decade, but I don't teach this every day. So you have knowledge, expertise on this. So take it for a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, to touch on your point, you mentioned like things that can't hurt your business. Like, here's the experience that I've had. I mean, first of all, the risk is a lot lower than people think. I mean, the average virtual assistant cares so much more about providing for their family, keeping you as a client, getting client referrals, staying on the marketplace you got them on, whatever it is, than they do about hurting your business. And even if a virtual assistant just makes the wrong decision, makes a mistake, sends an email to one of your customers that they shouldn't have sent, it's so easy. And I've done this. Like, you shoot them an email, they're like, hey, sorry, Jane's over here is new. I'm training her. Like, that was the wrong information. Here's the correct information. Maybe, and you don't even always have to do this, here's like a small credit as an apology. Like, people understand. They're not like, oh, how dare you have someone on your team like give me the wrong answer. Like, that's just not how the world works 99% of the time. And if you have a client that freaks out over that, maybe it's not the best client for you. Maybe it is, but there are signs there. So there's very few things that a virtual assistant can do that aren't just fixable very, very quickly. And if you get into your head that like you're the only person that can do certain things in your business, the second you do that, you just hit a ceiling on how far your business can go. And Alex Sharfin, who's a good Free Up client, friend of mine, he has a great quote. He's like, if you think you're the only person that can do what you do in your business, I have news for you. You're not that special. And I always think that's a great quote, because we all think that we're like, I'm the only one that can handle high-level customer service issues or sales, but there's always people out there that can do it way better than you can. And that's a mentality that I want to lead people with.
That helps. Alex is solid. we're having conversations. Listeners, you're getting conversations from the very best of people right now. So this is really helpful. I want to conclude with what Outsource School has done for us. So as an organization, I own a couple different companies. And the company that you guys have helped us with, I own a podcast network. So what that means is we produce podcasts, but we also own podcasts that we produce. And you guys have saved us a lot of time, a lot of headache. We work with some of the top podcasts in the world. We're talking like Department of Defense, lots of public companies. And there is little or no room for error on that type of stuff. And the SOPs that you guys have been able to help us with has dramatically and tremendously made a positive impact. So I really want to thank you for that.
Appreciate it. I mean, whenever you start a new business, you never know what the feedback's going to be, but it's been incredibly motivating on our side to just see how we've been able to make differences to other business. And we love feedback. So keep it coming. I know you're active in the group and we have a lot more in store.
Excellent. Yeah. So listeners, go to outsourceschool.com. We'll make sure to put a link inside of the show notes. Hopefully that you're able to listen to this interview and find out what stage of business you're in right now and then start to hire. At any time, send me an email or contact someone at Outsource School if you do have questions and you can get their training. I'm happy to be a guinea pig and answer questions as the case study for you listeners as well. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, Nate.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.